Hey everybody, welcome back to the Combo Couch. Trump is already winning the general. We can all see it. We can all feel it. We already knew this would happen if Biden or anybody but Sanders were really the nominee. And progressives have been right all along, to be honest. Progressives have called this out for a long time, especially the people that are close to how people are feeling on the ground, especially independent media, who have said largely that the Democratic Party doesn't care about losing to Donald Trump. They just care about beating Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders represents the most threat to the system in which they control everything, whether it's power and money or both. And they are so threatened by that system that they all did everything they could to stop Bernie. And now we have a corpse of a candidate be the nominee. Potentially right now, he's the only one left. And it's really been tough to see all of the candidates coalesce behind Joe Biden, completely ignoring his mental issue, the fact that he has a terrible record that can be pulled in a matter of seconds, and also the fact that he isn't a strong candidate. He isn't really popular. He seemingly can't even form a cohesive sentence. And now, of course, the many allegations he has regarding Tara Reade and other women who have come forward and talked about how he has sexually assaulted them. So even with all of that, Trump, of course, was in a position where he could look like a weaker candidate because of COVID-19, but he's actually been outflanking and outlefting many of the Democrats in Congress and many of the Democrats in general, including Joe Biden. Donald Trump has promised that he would give some sort of Medicare for all. He has given people stimulus money. It is not enough, but it seems like they are working on more. And Donald Trump has also been less of an interventionist when it comes to foreign policy, whereas it seems like Joe Biden wants to go to war with China right away. And basically what I'm trying to get to is the fact that Joe Biden represents the majority of the Democratic contingent. And while we have a pandemic where anything could happen, it's also true that the pandemic has proven that the Democrats are equally incompetent, if not more incompetent than the Republicans. And Trump has taken it upon himself to actually do what the Sanders campaign should have done all along, and that is use, of course, the weaknesses of Joe Biden and of Democrats against him. Take a look.
Not another commercial.
The kid used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I love kids jumping on my lap.
Donald Trump has also framed things in a way that makes him look like the stronger candidate. Donald Trump said, in light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens, I will be signing an executive order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States. Now, here's the thing. Yes, on immigration, this could be potentially turned around as something that is racist and xenophobic and something that he's using to his own benefit, which could be very well true. However, because we're in a pandemic, a lot of the people see this as a rational thing, while the Democratic contingent, like I've said before, is an echo chamber that automatically jumps to this is racism, this is bad. The majority of Americans feel that it makes sense. The majority of Americans feel like not having people coming in and out of the country during a pandemic is normal and should be something that a lot of countries should do during a crisis in a pandemic. The problem Donald Trump has here is that while simultaneously doing that, he wants to reopen the country and reopen businesses, and we just don't have the adequate testing for it yet. We haven't tested enough people, and I think we could reopen if we actually did that, but it's a contradiction in itself. But people aren't going to see it that way because people right now want things to get back to normal. They want to be able to go to work. And so the only protection that they in their minds would have is to not have people coming in and out of the country, to keep everything at home. And so another mechanism too is that focusing on rebuilding America and focusing on America first before we bring people in is something that rationally makes sense, but also when we know about Trump's background, it puts it into question if this is coming from a place of rationale and logic rather than a place of anti-immigration and anti-immigrant policies. And at the end of the day, though, we have to be aware of how people are going to perceive it rather than what it actually is, because Donald Trump is really, really good at turning things in a way that Americans see as normal. And I don't think the immigration shutdown is something that we should absolutely focus on 100%, because it's not a hill to die on, considering the pandemic and considering that people are asking for extended quarantines and to be asking for travel to be allowed is kind of contradictory to that as well. So ultimately, I just think Trump knows how to get his base to really stand by him and to really make most out of the situation and out of the moment. And I think he is definitely somebody that is able to actually bring people together, even if it's through a negative means. And that's something that Bernie Sanders could have done on the opposite end with more policy-driven focus, like the ad he had, and more attacks on the Democratic contingent. Donald Trump also put out an ad under Trump 2020.
We turn now to that $350 billion fund to help small businesses and its workers get through the shutdown.
It will be up to Congress to restock it.
But Democrats blocking that move this morning.
They asked for $250 billion in 48 hours. I said, well, I don't think so. They objected, and I congratulate the Senate Democrats.
Speaker Pelosi, what are you going to share with us from your home?
Chocolate candy.
Thousands have been forced to wait for hours at food banks all across the country.
This is chocolate, and then we have some other chocolate here. We just got it restocked with the ice cream.
You don't want to eat up everything all at one time.
I can't do it much longer. I'm trying so hard.
We were, shall we say, enjoying.
Having to admit that, yeah, we're starving, and
I like it better than anything else.
Taping this segment, there are 22 million people out of work.
This specific program is about stopping job losses today.
This is hurting people bad.
Other people in our family look for some other flavors, but
Right now, it's survival move. You don't know where that next something else is going to come from.
I don't know what I would have done if ice cream were not invented. I just wonder.
He basically framed Nancy Pelosi as being an out-of-touch politician, which she is. And granted that Trump's a billionaire, he has known exactly how to attack the Democrats at their weakest point. Nancy Pelosi is regarded as one of the huge leaders of the Democratic Party in Congress. She is, of course, the Speaker of the House, and she's also somebody that has so much influence over at all of Congress, even the squad. So he has painted her as somebody that's unreliable, as somebody that's out of touch, as somebody that's elitist, and his base is going to eat that up. She doesn't care about people. She's a terrible, terrible person and a terrible politician and Democrat. However, Donald Trump isn't necessarily much better. He just knows how to frame it so she looks like the person that she is. And it's these ads where you're attacking the establishment, right? Because even though Trump ran as an anti-establishment and as an anti-imperialist, he really hasn't shown himself to be that. But if he can just convince people he is, and if he looks better in comparison to people like Nancy Pelosi and people like Joe Biden, then there's no stopping him. And these are the reasons why I think Donald Trump has actually already won the general. And further, when you talk about what he has done record-wise, Donald Trump is actually less of an imperialist than Obama, less of an imperialist than Clinton. He didn't advocate to cut Social Security, and he just did it behind the scenes. And he is somebody that hasn't really had like the bad legislative record, like the crime bill, like the Patriot Act, even though his minions in the military-industrial complex are actually working to get rid of habeas corpus further by expanding the Patriot Act. So while Donald Trump hasn't really done much to help people, he hasn't done as many terrible things as his predecessors. So when people say Donald Trump is the most dangerous president in modern history, they're quickly forgetting George Bush. They're quickly forgetting Obama. They're quickly forgetting Bush Sr., Reagan, all of these presidents who have started more wars than Donald Trump, who have let more money go into the hands of banks and Wall Street, who began that process. It's not in a defense of Trump as much as it's in complete offense of the hyperbole put out by many Democrats, including Bernie Sanders, who love to say that Donald Trump must be removed at all costs. But the system that allowed Trump to be elected hasn't even been grappled with. So we need to first grapple the system. And Trump feeds off of that because he is still being that anti-establishment guy. And he is going to win because of that, because the majority of people, even those who don't like him, see him as still very anti-establishment. And that's something that they can't really take away from him. Biden is such a terrible candidate that even Roger Waters thinks Biden is weak. Roger Waters said that Joe Biden is a fucking slimeball who can't beat Trump. I'm so flabbergasted and gobsmacked by the way the Democratic National Committee has railroaded Bernie. And that's the thing. Like, people are all over the world are seeing just how terrible of a candidate Joe Biden is, how he just continuously uses his wife as his go-to, who's going to be talking for him, and how he continuously is so out of touch with what's needed that his campaign has been putting really cringeworthy ads like this one.
It was like outside. I was kind of just standing there on my phone. We all knew that he was coming out.
I was just like, "Hi, Vice President Biden, how are you?" Like, I was like freaking out.
Like, I just hear like a roar, and then I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" You can kind of see him from like the very back of my selfie.
It's been my Facebook profile picture for the last 4 years. It's not a very good picture of me, but it is a picture of me with Vice President Joe Biden.
I lived in Delaware all my life, so I grew up. You saw him at the grocery store getting some coffee on our college campus. I worked at the university, and he just came and he walked into my job, asked us a couple questions about what we like to do. He's really trying to get to know each one of us, and you could see that, you know.
He's just like your cool family member that you know, or like a family friend that you just spoke to. Like, hi, but like I wouldn't call him Joe, but like if I knew him well enough, I'd be like, hey Joe! That's the kind of vibe I get from him.
I've always loved politics. I've been involved in campus organizing since my freshman year.
All politics is personal when you live it.
The reason I'm here today is because I really believe in Joe Biden.
Please keep doing your thing. Like, I need you to win.
I love this guy, and I gotta help him become president for sure.
I mean, does it get more narcissistic and self-serving than that? I just don't understand how people are still, holding on to this idea that people are just going to line up around Joe Biden, that his campaign thinks that people are going to line up behind him, that Bernie Sanders thinks that we're all going to line up behind him. I mean, this idea is just absolutely ridiculous. And Donald Trump, of course, has the upper hand by attacking Biden where it hurts. And he's actually using policy positions, too, to attack the Democrats. What we're going to see, if this goes the way I see it, it looks like Donald Trump is going to not only win in a massive landslide, but also the Senate and the House are going to go extremely right. And Democrats have nobody to blame but themselves for literally gambling away any sort of possibility for a progressive presidency under Bernie Sanders by committing election fraud, by being completely unfair, by using the mainstream media as a weapon against Sanders and against the progressive contingent. And they have nobody to blame. In fact, progressives should embrace the fact that Joe Biden isn't winning because of them. And I don't think it's just because of progressives, but progressives should start not taking that as an insult and instead take it as an actual virtue, because it's time for them to stand against the entire establishment. And if they want to defeat Donald Trump, if they really wanted to defeat Donald Trump, the Democrats wouldn't have acted the way they did, and we would be seeing Bernie Sanders, who is the strongest contender against Trump, be the nominee. Again, Democrats are going to have to do a lot better than give attacks on why Donald Trump is the most dangerous president in modern history, saying that he is racist, sexist, homophobe, when Joe Biden is the same thing, if not worse, because he has a record and because he stood by as Obama did what he did. Recently in The Intercept, Jeremy Scahill did a whole article on the differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. While I agreed with most of the points and I thought it was a well-written article, there are many things I didn't agree with. One of those things was that the idea that most Bernie supporters are going to vote for Joe Biden anyway. I think that idea is so far out of touch. It's so far-fetched. I think it's really arrogant to say that, because right now the Sanders supporters haven't been given a reason to vote for Joe Biden. He's not adopting Medicare for all. He's not adopting college for all. He's not adopting debt forgiveness for students. He's not really been involved in anything to do with the coronavirus stuff. He hasn't really shown that he's presidential material. He hasn't done any of that stuff. But more importantly, he was selected, and he was selected by the party in a very undemocratic way through election fraud, through voter suppression, and there's no real reason for progressives and leftists to actually continue supporting a party that doesn't want them, that has continuously vilified them time and time again, calling them Bernie bros, MAGA people, comparing them to just the Nazis, the worst. And they've had to take it time and time again. And in the end, all they got was an endorsement of Sanders to those same people, spewing that vitriol to them and gaslighting them. And so they're not going to fall in line, thinking that is really being completely out of the pulse of where the people are. Another thing is the authoritarianism of Trump versus Biden. Like, we could sit here all day and discuss how Trump is an authoritarian, is in a way a fascist, is dictatorial, how he has done things without anybody's approval, etc. But then we would have to also discuss how the presidents before him actually set that precedent, how they literally went and deregulated Wall Street, like Obama, transferred wealth from the poorest to the richest under Obama, how George Bush started several wars, including one of the most costly, whether in life-wise, human life toll-wise, and also financially, and how it ruined our economy for years to come. That's the reality. You can also talk about Bill Clinton and the crime bill. You can also talk about the criminal justice disaster that happened during his reign, and also the foreign policy disaster during Obama's reign. You can also talk about Ronald Reagan and neoliberalism, like all of that. You cannot tell me that Donald Trump is more authoritarian than all of those people combined. It's just that he speaks in a way you don't like, and that is the definition of neoliberalism. Paying more attention to words than actual actions. So I don't agree with that. I also think that while most writers eventually make the case that Joe Biden is the nominee, that's the lesser of evils, I 100% disagree. I think the lesser of evils in this case is actually Trump, because Trump isn't going to start war with China. Trump isn't necessarily going to go and give everything to the military-industrial complex right away. He hasn't shown that. He hasn't been the anti-interventionist he said he would be, but he hasn't been as much of an interventionist as the previous presidents before. We know what we get with Biden. With Donald Trump, there's a possibility of him trying to maintain his popularity by listening to what his people want. And right now, nobody in government is really doing us a service, the way they're dealing with the pandemic. But Donald Trump's presidency, again, would initial a counteracting movement against him, beyond the resistance, the Bernie Sanders movement, the progressive movement, the fact that all these people came out and were woken up because of Bernie and then subsequently because of Trump's victory. But if Hillary Clinton had won, all of these people would see it as a victory. Oh, we defeated the fascist Trump. Really, Hillary Clinton would have got us into more wars, possibly with Russia, definitely with Syria, and we would be probably in a worse off place, if not the same. And that's something that people don't want to look at, don't want to admit to, but that's something that's very real. So I just don't think that it's lesser of evils is a fair argument when it comes between Biden and Trump, because you're going to lose that argument just based on policies, based on record. And, the only place you win that is on rhetoric. And I think rhetoric doesn't really matter to millions of people. So I think we're going to see Donald Trump really sweep against Joe Biden. As much as the Democrats would love to defeat him, I don't think they actually want to defeat him as much as they say they do. So guys, thank you for watching. As always, check us out on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. Click the bell to make sure you get the notifications. Check us out on Rockfin, a new cryptocurrency platform that we're in and that many new YouTubers are using as well. And we're always on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch. Bye, guys.